Hi there guys, Vino here, and welcome to this Vino Blunt production, and welcome to this kickback discussion. It's been a while since I've done the kickback discussions. I know people do enjoy the kickback discussions. This was going to be either a TFAC or a late night ramble last night, but to be honest, I just went to bed and ended up falling asleep. I was going to take my selfie stick upstairs to bed with me and then record a video from my bed, but I just ended up passing out after messaging a couple of people on Discord and what have you. So I just passed out at that point. So it's turned into a kickback discussion today. And what this kickback discussion is going to be talking about my week off. This week had a lovely week off, by the way, lovely and relaxing. Just some of the things I've sort of done, sort of vlog style sort of stuff, and then talking about some bits and bobs. So I invite you guys to grab a beverage. I do have another adjacent series called Time for a Cuppa, where I often have a cup of tea in my hand. There might actually be a TFAC later today, depending on how I feel, as well as this kickback discussion. I do want to play around with the idea of doing multiple uploads during the day. One thing that when I started YouTube is doing multiple uploads in a day was a big no-no. In fact, your channel got squashed in the algorithm if you try to do multiple videos in a day. But I think that goes for like the big YouTubers. I think smaller YouTubers, I think the more videos they put up, the more potential exposure they're going to get, because there's not essentially what happens if you're a big YouTuber. When you put out your first video, it goes to, say for instance, 80% of your subscriber base. You then put out another video that day and it goes out to, say, 50% of your subscriber base. You put out a third video that day and it then goes out to, say, 20% of your subscriber base. So every subsequent video that you upload, it basically gets put out to less and less of your audience. Not only that, but your audience will probably suffer from fatigue from watching your videos, especially if it's a high production video and there's a lot of animation and quick edits and that sort of stuff. Your audience may get a little bit fatigued from that, and then the third video in that day isn't going to do as well as the first video. However, there is a certain percentage of subscribers or certain amount of subscribers that your videos will always be fed to. And I think if you're a smaller YouTuber, I think that it feeds it out regardless. And of course, nowadays, YouTube are all about watch hours. They're not about subscribers or other metrics, comments, and that sort of stuff. Watch hours is where YouTube is at the moment. So anyway, that's a bit of a tangent for me to toying with the idea of multiple uploads in a day. We'll see where that goes. But I invite everybody to grab a drink. I have a bottle of water right now, keeping refreshed with the just had a bang. It sounded like the front door, but there's no one due home till 9 o'clock tonight, and it's currently 11:30 in the morning. So I'm not sure what that was all about. Anyway, so I invite everybody to grab their own beverage of choice, whether it be soft, hard, whatever it may be. Grab a beverage of choice. And as I was about to say, I have an adjacent series called TFAC, Time for a Cuppa. Often have a cup in my hand, but it's not uncommon for me to have a different beverage of choice in my hand when it comes to kickback discussions, just to keep the whistle wet, and to drink something, because sometimes it's nice to sort of have that back and forth as if you're sat down in a living room or maybe a park somewhere having a drink with a friend catching up. So when it comes to my week off, has been a lovely week off. I've kept up. I've caught up with some YouTube that I need to catch up with. Just generally been a really good week off. Things at work have been a little bit topsy-turvy here and there, due to various reasons. So it's nice just to relax, not think about work for a little period of time, and just, focus on other things, focus on catching up on some sleep, focus up on catching up on some YouTube or whatever media that you catch up on. Been obviously playing some games. I'm very close at the moment. I'll grab the game. Very close to beating the Resident Evil 4 remake at the moment. So I bought this back when it launched. To be honest, and I think I said this in the previous video, around the time that I got this, I also got Tears of the Kingdom. Now, Tears of the Kingdom took a major backseat when it came to gaming. I played Tears of the Kingdom, got stuck on the first boss. More on that in a moment. And then I bought this shortly afterwards, or shortly before. I can't remember exactly what order I bought them in. But I went back to playing this, essentially. Either I bought it afterwards and played it, or I went back to playing it and got really far in it until I got stuck on a specific part that was really frustrating to me. Even though I'm playing on the easiest difficulty, it was still bloody difficult, frustrating for me to get past, whatever the reason that was for. But I'm actually in the final section at the moment, making my way to the final boss. So, yeah, really, really enjoy Resident Evil 4. It's funny because I saw a Twitter stream whatever you want to call it, from a known Resident Evil speedrunner. I think it was Carcinogen, but don't quote me on who it was. But there was I know that they're very much a Resident Evil speedrunner. They're most known for speedrunning Resident Evil 2. Back in the day, they did speedrun the Resident Evil 2 remake, and they also speedrun the Resident Evil 3 remake when that came out. So it only goes, it's only logical that they would speedrun Resident Evil 4. And they basically said on this Twitter stream, the original tweet and then the whole stream that then continued afterwards, that Resident Evil 4 remake is poorly designed. It's very poorly designed, doesn't stack up the original in any way, shape or form, and Capcom should be ashamed of themselves, that sort of stuff. Now, I'm not a speedrunner myself, but I do keep up with the speedrunning community. I watch Awesome Games Done Quick and Summer Games Done Quick every year, and I do try and keep up with the goings on of the speedrunning community. Now, one thing I will say, and I'm sure any speedrunner or anybody part of that community will agree, there is some drama in that community, big time. Big drama, and there's a lot of hot takes, a lot of strong opinions, all that kind of stuff. So, so when a speedrunner kind of goes at a developer for a game not being speedrunner friendly, I take it with a pinch of salt. I take it with a massive pinch of salt. Metroid Dread, when that came out a couple of years ago, got a lot of praise for being very speedrunner friendly. Now you've got to remember that it was Super Metroid that birthed what we know as the modern speedrunning community and just speedrunning in general. So of course Nintendo have, they have a competitor in that race, if you know what I mean. They when it comes to the Metroid series as well, there's a certain expectation. And as the updates and DLC and what have you for Metroid Dread came out, they favoured more and more the speedrunning community. And it got absolutely lapped up. But there were still a couple of people that turned around and said that Metroid Dread isn't speedrunner friendly, Nintendo should be ashamed of themselves, and the game should have been adapted for speedrunners. This is where I have an issue with this. And what I have an issue with this is speedrunners represent a very small percentage of the gaming community. A very small percentage of the gaming community. And you can't what's the word? You can't adjust a gameplay to appease that part of the community and then sacrifice design elements for the rest of the gaming community, because you ain't gonna, if a game tomorrow marketed directly towards speedrunners and only speedrunners, I bet you the game would be a flop. I bet you the game would flop and it would not do. And there are actually games out there that are marketed directly to speedrunners, but they tend to be free to play games or cheap indie games in which, the individual's overhead to make money back isn't that grand. You're not going to get the likes of Nintendo and Capcom and all the big companies, developers, you're not going to get them making a game purely for speedrunners. You may get elements in the game aimed at speedrunners, hence the mercenaries mode that was added free of charge post game release. That is sort of feeding into a speedrunning kind of mentality, and the boss rush mode that was put into Metroid Dread post launch. That is also very much speedrunning kind of stuff. And is it the expert mode? We can only get hit once and you die. That's also very much speedrun kind of territories. So you can have, edit modes and DLCs and what have you, but a game itself. The reason I bring this up is I actually think the design of this game is incredible, and is a facsimile of the original Resident Evil 4, and it expands on it even more. I think that particular speedrunner was it was a very, very hot take, I'll tell you that much. And now a load of people came into the Twitter stream with them and then started moaning about Resident Evil 4. Funny enough, I just randomly decided to click on one of their profiles, scrolled through their Twitter feed, and found that actually when Resident Evil 4 first launched, they were singing its praises. They thought it's a fantastic game. They thought it was well designed. It was, graphics were good, all that kind of stuff. They even did a little write up on their blog. But as soon as a big speedrunner in the community says the game is badly designed, the game's bad all of a sudden. I detect a bit of brown nosing there, if I ever did detect a bit of brown nosing. But it is what it is at the end of the day. But yeah, almost completed that. On the subject of Tears of the Kingdom, I have now beaten the first boss. Took me a little bit to beat the first boss, but have now beaten the first boss, and I'm making my way to the second boss right now. So that's what I've been doing with my week, primarily gaming, videos. Probably going to beat Resident Evil 4 before I go back to work. That sort of stuff. This sort of stuff that you do. Anyway, in terms of what I spoke about yesterday, in terms of purchasing decisions, you're probably not surprised to hear this. It's kind of up in the air. Last night, when I was on Facebook Marketplace, I saw something that I really, really want, to be honest. I'm just doing the calculations at the moment to see if I can afford it. I probably can. Just doing the calculations. And then we'll go from there. It's a really interesting thing. I'm not going to say what it is just yet until I know that I've secured it. But yeah, I'm really interested in it. Ever since that camera, I was unable to get that camera, I have felt quite bummed and have wanted something kind of geeky, kind of tech related to sort of sink my teeth into. And this item that I found probably is the thing to do. So naturally, I'm kind of talking myself into wanting to get it. There are some rules surrounding this thing, so I'm going to have to read up on those rules, make sure I understand those rules and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so that's the plan at the moment. There's probably, actually thinking about it, there probably is going to be a TFAC later, just to talk about some other bits and bobs, maybe talk about if I've actually decided to make that purchase decision. But until next time, guys, hopefully enjoyed this little kickback discussion, just talking about some of the things that have been going on with me lately and this week, and talking about some other elements. But until next time, guys, please take care, and as always, enjoy the rest of your day. Ta-ra.